Hello and welcome to Friends That Invest, your favorite podcast that feels like a voice note from your favorite finance friend. I'm Sam Kaur and I am wildly passionate about money. So each week I'll be breaking down investing and personal finance so that the group chat can get richer together. I was chatting with some Investee Besties and they were telling me that they would love to see some wedding and budget related content. And I thought, what better time than just before my wedding to do a 3-part wedding series for the Investee Besties, sharing real numbers, sharing real details, and going into the things that are going to make wedding time less stressful, whether you are a bride, a bridesmaid, or you just know someone in your life that is getting married, or you just want to know these things because, like me, you are a bit of a nosy person. Welcome to the 3-part series where I'm going to be breaking down wedding costs, wedding budgets, ways to save money, ways to spend on things that matter and let go of things that don't, and definitely sharing a few numbers that give you a little bit more of a behind the scenes look. Unsurprisingly, weddings are very expensive, but I have saved almost $10,000 on my wedding by doing these little tips that have made such a difference. And one of these things I have saved, guys, $4,000 by writing one email, and I'll be sharing exactly what I said so that you can use this too. And if by the end of this episode, you can save $1,000 within like 30 minutes, that is like saving $33 every single minute. And I call that a money win. So without further ado, let's get into the episode where I share 24 ways to save money in your wedding. Now, rather than this being like very generic, where I just share like these little things that are like, just don't have food or like just cut the number of people, I actually want to break down ways to save money by just tackling the biggest costs in a wedding. And those costs are venue, catering, so that includes like drinks and the staff involved in catering, photography, and it involves the apparel. Those 4 things are the biggest costs in weddings. They've been the biggest costs in mine. And so by tackling those 4 alone, you're going to be able to save so much more money. And it's not going to be saving like $10 here and there. It's going to be hundreds of dollars. So these things really add up. Now, the first way to save money is to negotiate every single bill. The first cost I'm going to cover that you can save money on are venue related. Then we're going to go into how to save costs in catering. Then we're going to talk about photography. And then we're also going to talk about apparel and any other little ways that you can save money. But first off, venue and wedding invitations. The first tip to saving money, I just do not know why we don't all do this anymore, but it is sending e-invitations, making them on Canva. I have used Canva for all my wedding invitations and sending them over like WhatsApp. And you might say, Sim, isn't that like tacky, or like, how is my grandma going to know? And to that, I say, I just send the invitation and then I write a text message to every person, just like a copy and paste, like, hey, so excited to invite you to our wedding. You can RSVP just by texting back. And then I make like an Excel spreadsheet of every single person we've sent the invite to and then who's coming. I find it so much easier doing it that way and saving money that way than getting like a physical card. Like I've seen people send physical save the date cards. And again, what I'm going to share in this episode is not like a way to shame people if they have done these things for their weddings or if they choose to do them. These are just some of the tips that you can use. There's going to be a lot of things that you're like, Sim, I actually do value that, so I will do it. And there's other things that I'm going to say like, don't spend money on that. And you'll be like, Sim, well, I disagree with you. And that is totally fine. Out of like 24, 25 tips, even if there's like 5 that you find value in, that makes me happy. We're going to be happy people. But I have found that sending e-invitations are just so much easier because imagine just like the time and the cost of like getting your invitations printed. And then you start going on like, I need to get it printed on like really nice printing paper, like that thick cardboardy stuff. I can't get it printed on like A4, not glossy, like printing paper that just doesn't work. And so suddenly your invitations are like $1 an invitation or like $2 an invitation. And then especially if you're Indian, you're not going to have like one card. You have lots of different wedding events. You're going to have like the Sangeet or the Jago or the Haldi and the Mendi and like the Sikh wedding. If you're having a multicultural wedding, you've also got that side's wedding and the reception. And so there's all these different pamphlets that get printed out, and suddenly you need like an envelope, and it is the Wild West. And I've seen some really beautiful but very elaborate wedding invitations. I've seen some that are like you get a box and the box has like sweets in it, and you open the sweet box and then within it are the invitations. But then also you're paying for a sweet box and you're filling it up with laddus. Like, it is so cool to receive as a guest. But if you are trying to do a wedding on a budget, it is maybe something that you can, skip. And I do think that wedding invitations, like, yeah, they do feel a little bit like less effort. But what we did is we sent invitations to everyone, and then we just printed out a couple of them to give to like grandparents or give to like our parents and ourselves, so that we have like a physical copy. And then that way you still have that part of it. But it's become more and more common for invitations, so you're not in bad company if you start doing them. The second tip that has made such a difference, and this is the one where I saved $4,000 by sending one email, and I will bring up the email and tell you what I wrote. Anytime that a vendor gives me a quote, this is what I say. I say, "Thank you so much for sending this through. I would like to pay the total now rather than just the deposit. And as a result, could we please drop this from, let's say, like $10,000 down to, let's say, like $8,000. And as a result, I can transfer that money now." So I did that for a vendor that was a large vendor that was doing a big chunk of something. And I got them to drop down the price by $4,000. Mind you, it was like a high price to begin with, but $4,000, they were like, "Okay, fine. If you pay now, we'll give you $4,000 off." And that was just with one email. Like, that is $4,000 I can put towards other costs that are important to me. Or in my case, I can put it towards a really nice honeymoon or just invest the money. It just made me so happy. And I did this with quite a few different costs. Like, maybe you won't have one vendor that can cut down that much, but everyone that you talk to, that you just ask, it's free to ask. Who's like, the worst they say is no. They're not going to be offended. They're just going to be like, "Sorry, we don't offer that." And you'll be like, "No worries. I still want to work with you." Or they go, "Yeah, sure. We can take that on." And you go, "Awesome. Fantastic. I've just saved $100 here, $1,000 there." So some of the discounts I got was the $4,000 discount. Another one I saved $1,000. Another one I saved $2,000. Another one I saved $100. And so altogether I saved $8,200 just by asking. Just by like having the audacity to be like, "Hey, I really value what you do. If I pay you all the money up front now, that's cash flow for your business. Would that make you more likely to take it?" And they might say yes, and they might say no, but either way, like, you lose nothing and you might gain a couple of hundred and even a couple of $1,000 back. The third money saving tip for a wedding, and this is actually one I did not do, and therefore it is a tip that I've learned from my hindsight experience, is don't choose a wedding venue that needs a marquee, like needs a tent, because what I did is we chose a wedding venue that was like an outdoor garden area, and then we had to install a marquee on top. And so by choosing a wedding venue that doesn't need to do that, you're saving the cost of the marquee, because tents are expensive. And I had no idea. Like, a marquee is like a big tent. Then you have to pay for flooring. Then you have to pay for lighting. Then you have to pay for like electricity. And then you have to pay for portable toilets, fancy portable toilets, because you're not going to put them in portaloos to be installed. You're basically building a house for it. And so if you can choose a venue that already has like 4 walls and a roof, then you don't have to spend on a tent, and that's going to save you quite a bit of money, because those things were not cheap. And if you want a nice tent, then the costs go up even more. Now, number 4, when it comes to saving money, is the less number of vendors you have for your wedding, the less costly it will be. One thing that really surprised me when planning out my wedding was you could have someone that does flowers, and then you can have someone that does the tables, and then you could have someone that does the decor on the tables, and you could have someone else that does the cutlery and the glassware, and someone else that does the lighting, and someone else that does the draping. And suddenly you have 10 different wedding vendors, and they all have their own call out fee, and they all have their own like per person and staff costs. And so what we did that really helped save money is if you work with just a few people and say, hey, person that does decorations, do you also bring in tables? Could you do that? Do you also do decor and lighting and draping? Could you do that? If you're working with someone that does the like marquee, you could be like, hey, tent person, do you also do flooring? Like, can we just work with you directly? Everything that you do, or like in our case with an Indian wedding, it was like, hey, DJ, do you also have like a doll player that can also like play the drums at the same time? Like, you know, we need that. And you end up just working with less people, which means it becomes cheaper. And that has been such a game changer for us. Number 5, when it comes to saving weddings, is very, very similar. In the same way that you want to combine your wedding vendors, combine your wedding venue. If you can do things at the same place on the same day, that can make such a difference. Again, this is probably more related to Indian weddings, but Western weddings are very similar. In Eastern weddings, if you can have like your wedding reception right after the civil ceremony in the same venue, that is going to save you a lot of money rather than like doing one thing in one place, having like the wedding at the church or the temple, and then packing everyone up and everything up and going to the next venue where you need like another set of decor and another set of people and another set of like da 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 da. And so it just was a lot cheaper and honestly just like so much easier to do something in one place. I had a friend, I mean, this worked because she had a really big backyard because her family lived on a farm, but they just hired a big tent and put all of their pre-wedding celebrations for the Indian wedding in the tent and just did it like every single day, like Sangeet one day, Haldi and Mendi another day. They had another event. They had that one there too. They had the Sikh wedding at the temple, and then they had the reception at a hotel. But by putting lots of events just in one place, they didn't have to change up the decor too much. It was the same, you know, tables as the night before. Maybe they changed the colors around a little bit, but it wasn't too overwhelming. And that can help you save quite a bit of money too. The 6th way to save money at your wedding, especially when it comes to venues, is doing it in your home city. If someone had said this to me at the start of my wedding planning, like, Sim, do your wedding in your home city, I think I would be so against it. I'd be like, absolutely not. Like, that doesn't sound luxurious and fun. Like, I don't want to have a wedding in the place that I've spent like my entire life. That just feels really boring. I want to go somewhere exotic or fancy. And I think at the same time, I was kind of worried, like, if I do it where I grew up, I have to invite everyone and that's going to be really expensive. And so if we do like an overseas wedding or like a wedding where people have to fly to, like, you know, in Queenstown, New Zealand or Waiheke Island, New Zealand, that might be a little bit better. And the truth is, it is actually so much cheaper to do your wedding in your home city because you're not spending on flights and accommodation. You're not spending on the hotel. You're obviously going to come in like a few days before and leave a few days after. So the hotel costs do add up. And if you're Indian like me, you kind of are expected to pay for a lot of people's hotel rooms anyway. So you might as well just do the wedding in your own hometown. It's ended up becoming a really good decision, not just financially, but also stress-wise, because if I forget something, if something gets left behind, that is okay. Someone can just drive over and pick it up from my house, as opposed to like, oh, we are in another country or we are in another city. And if I have left something, like, that's it. God help us all. There's nothing I can do about it. It's also quite easy to plan a wedding in the city that you're in, just because you can then like deal with wedding vendors that are in that area. And for an Indian wedding, it was important for me to have my wedding near Indian wedding vendors. And if I had gone elsewhere, I would either have to ask my vendors to fly with me, which like no, or find vendors there and not be able to meet them and see them until like the week of the wedding. So that was a little bit too much for me to handle. The 7th tip to save money at your wedding, and this one has definitely been the most controversial between my friends in real life, my wedding planner, just like a random lady I once met at a barbecue. Like, we have made the decision to just do artificial flowers for the wedding decor. Like, I love flowers, but I've never felt a strong connection to having like real flowers at a wedding. And everyone I've spoken to has been like, oh my God, that is like sacrilegious. That is so bad. Like, how could you do that? And I guess it's because like I would be spending $7,000 to $10,000 on wedding flowers if they were real, but instead the wedding decorist that I have that is doing the decor for every event across all the days, they have just artificial flowers and they're beautiful. And I use them at my roka, which is like a pre-engagement ceremony that we did at my parents' house, which in itself was quite cheap. And they turned out really nice in photographs. And a lot of Indian people in my city just use this one incredible person that just does all the decor. And so the entire cost of the decor was like probably cheaper than a very fancy set of large flowers. And that just saved me so much money. I'm pretty sure I saved like $10,000 just on that alone. And I'm still incorporating fresh flowers in places that matter. So like just doing fresh flowers in my bouquet and just doing fresh flowers in my bridesmaids' bouquets and my husband-to-be's, what do you call that thing, that the little thing they pin it on? I always forget. Well, they have like one flower to match your flowers. I didn't even realize that was a thing. It is. And that is another cost. And so as a result, my flowers were so much cheaper because I'm only having bridal bouquets and my bridesmaids' bouquets and like a single tulip on my fiance's suit, and everything else is artificial. And I didn't realize that was controversial, but I guess there are probably going to be more controversial things that I've said in here that I don't realize that maybe someone might be like, Sim, that's not the norm. You know that, right? Right? In the next chapter, catering is one of the biggest costs that comes along with weddings. Food is so important. It can cost a lot of money. The sky is really the limit. And so these are some of the things that you can do to cut down on the food related costs. And these are some of the things that we did as well. Tip number 8 to saving money is having buffet style or family style foods. I didn't actually know what family style was, but it's when on our tables, we're doing round tables because I am Indian and I do not get the long table vibe. I do not understand it. They look great in photos, but like it's just not for me. So we're doing round tables and our food is going to be in the middle of the table, family style. So it gets put there and you can kind of just like take what you need. The options that we considered was by doing that or doing a buffet, it was going to be cheaper than like, set course plated menus that come and go and you've got waiters coming and going, because that also adds up a lot of costs with like staff time. And I thought buffet style was cheaper with our particular wedding caterer and like the vibe that they had. They said, actually, in our case, family style will be cheaper than buffet style. So that's what we ended up going with. And, the wedding hasn't happened yet, but hopefully it turns out to be fine. And we just have like different curries, and we're also doing Spanish food. So like Spanish food and Indian food kind of mixed together in like a family style vibe. So that should be fine. And that helps cut down costs. Now that kind of leads to tip number 9, which is there are expensive cuisines for weddings and there are cheaper cuisines for weddings. I just want to make it very clear. These cheaper wedding cuisines don't mean that they are worse cuisines. It doesn't mean that they are like bad cuisines or they don't like matter as much. They're just cheaper to make because they're often made in like a bulk way. So Indian food, Italian food, pastas, curries, tacos, these things aren't as costly. And so if you want a cheaper cuisine, then opting for those is a little bit easier than opting for like American style food or like Western Australian style food. What is Australian style food? Like shrimp on a barbie or something. But if you opt for that, that also helps cut down costs by a little bit because the style of food that's made is just not as expensive. And I don't know why Indian catering is cheaper, but I've just found it always tends to be. My theory is just like you can make it in a big, large pot. So maybe that's the reason. The 10th tip to saving money on your wedding. So obviously, as you can tell, our caterer is Spanish. We got told to use Spanish wine for the wedding and to use Spanish sparkling wine as the champagne equivalent. And our caterer basically said, look, if you use a wine from a country that people don't really know that much where we're getting married, then they're not going to know if this is like an expensive brand or a cheap brand. But if you like, let's say you're getting married in New Zealand and you use a bottle and everyone's like, oh, Villa Maria. Like, I know where that stands. I know if it's like a good wine brand or not so good or cheap, or like, oh, that champagne like is Verve. They've obviously spent a lot versus like whatever the budget equivalent is. I don't really care about these things. I didn't realize that this was important, but it was, I guess, a valuable point. And so we ended up opting for like cheaper drinking options. I personally was looking at doing like a dry wedding, but I couldn't commit to it. I think it just would have been so hard to explain to everyone. And I guess it does come across a little bit cheap, but then also like, cultural reasons. You don't really need alcohol at a Sikh wedding, but then we're also Punjabi. And so like, oh my God. And so we can like cut down on the expensiveness of the wines by just going for a country of wine brands that people like, I don't know where this stands, so I cannot judge it. It's a little bit funny, that one. Now, the 11th way of saving money at your wedding is to ask your caterer to also be the person that makes your wedding cake. This is what we did. And it, again, reduces the number of vendors. It means they're already cooking. They're already doing stuff in the kitchen. It's just easier for them to make it rather than getting like a separate vendor to make the cake. If they specialize in cakes, they're probably going to be a little bit more pricey. And then they have to actually bring the cake, and the travel costs and all of that add up as well. So that was one of the ways that we could save. And also number 12 is when you are getting ready with your bridal party, don't use a separate vendor to feed them. Like if you are getting ready in the afternoon or in the morning, by having the same caterer, our caterer was like, hey, do you want us to make like just like a cheese board or something for you as well? Like while everyone's getting ready at the wedding venue, we were like, oh yeah, that would actually be perfect. It saves us from like having to go and like order a big Uber Eats lunch for like all these people, or going out and like buying pizza. And no one really wants anything heavy before a wedding anyway. So a grazing platter is actually like a fantastic thing to do. And again, by using the same vendor, we can cut down on price. This then leads me on to chapter number 3, which is saving money in the photography and videography area. Again, third highest cost in weddings usually. This is definitely a do as I say and not as I do segment, because this was not an area that I cut down in. I love videography. I love photography. I want as many photos as possible. And I really love candid. So I really wanted to have 2 photographers, one like taking photos of me and my husband to be, but also someone taking photos of like my mum and dad laughing, or my friends like giggling, or being on the dance floor, just like those candids of like someone tearing up during the speeches, and then also someone photographing the speeches. And so that was important to me. So these ways of cutting down costs on photographer and videographer are not things I did. It is very much a do as I say and not as I do segment. But in saying that, these are still some tips that you might find helpful if you don't need to, spend as much on it, and you're like, hey, it's not really something I value as much, and I still would like to know some ways to reduce those costs, because they are obviously not very cheap. So the 13th tip to saving money at your wedding, actually, I will say that this is something we did do, is reducing the hours that your videographer and photographer need to be at the wedding. One of the mistakes I made is I thought, well, from like when we're getting ready to the very end of pack down, like we should have someone taking photos. But if you think about it, like for the Western wedding where we have like the civil wedding and the reception, the girls start getting their hair and makeup done like pretty early. And we don't need someone being there from like 9 a.m. or 10 a.m. all the way to midnight when everything is all done. That's a lot of filming time. And so instead, what we've done is we went, well, actually, the bride only starts getting ready last anyway. So we'll have the photographer come as I'm finishing up getting ready, just for those few shots of like having blush put on me or like my hair being tied up. But I don't need someone like taking photos of me barefaced, getting like color corrector on, being put on me. And I don't need that for like 2 hours. I also don't need like, photos of my hair being curled. Like I'm okay with leaving that out. On the flip side, we don't really need, it would have been nice, but we don't need the like photos of what everyone looks like at 11 p.m., like on the dance floor, sweaty, maybe stumbling a little bit, being tired if it's not that fun of a wedding, or like waiting to go home. Like that's maybe not as necessary. I do want maybe you do also want some of those fun dancing photos, but that can be taken at 9 p.m. or 9:30. And, you only need like half an hour of those. And then the photographer and videographer can pack up and go home. So just changing the time of when they need to physically be there is going to help reduce the costs, and also, of course, using the same photographer and videographer for all wedding events, especially if you're having an Indian wedding, helps cut down costs as well, because it's just same team, keeps it simple, don't have to worry. Tip number 14 of saving costs around the wedding is asking if you can have a digital only package with your wedding photographer. Some photographers, you might not realize, actually part of the cost includes like giving you an album or like printing out a couple of hard copies for you, or even just like, one big frame with a photo, and just being like, hey, I just want to ask, do you have a separate pricing for just digital only? I just want it like on an iCloud sent to me, and is that okay? And what would that cost look like? Again, they might say, no, we don't do that, and it doesn't actually change the price. Or they might go, yeah, actually, we would have printed out something for you, and that's like $100, so we can take $100 off it. Incredible. I would take that. Now, the next tip that you can do is you can also ask, hey, can we remove any extras? For example, maybe they've included a like pre-wedding shoot or an engagement shoot, or like a something else shoot that maybe you don't necessarily need. Like in my case, my photographer offered us a pre-wedding shoot, and they said it was free. And in hindsight, I probably could have said, hey, we don't need that. And that's probably going to take up like 2 or 3 hours of your time to like come, film it, take photos of it. Could we just like either reduce costs by cutting that out, or could you add that to the actual wedding week and just do like 3 extra hours of filming that way? Because that means more to me than, the other thing. And so it's just like being a little bit creative and not being offensive. Just like being creative. And the 16th way of saving money for your photography at the wedding is hiring a friend. It sounds a little bit intense. And if you're someone like me, you're probably like, no, Sam, I feel bad. Like, I don't want to ask a friend to do that. But this doesn't have to be a friend from the wedding party. It doesn't have to be a friend that you've invited to the wedding. It could be a work colleague or an acquaintance or someone who has a friend that does photography. And if you're trying to cut down costs here, as long as they can like show you some examples of weddings they've done, or if they've put them on their Instagram, or you have a friend that's used them for their wedding, if you're happy with those photos, then usually people that aren't full-time wedding photographers aren't going to cost as much as a full-time wedding photographer, because it's not their main gig. And as a result, maybe you could get them for a couple of $1,000s cheaper, and that absolutely adds up. Now, they're obviously not going to give you the same quality as a professional wedding photographer that does it full time. But again, if it's not something you really value and you'd rather put that money towards something else like better food or a better outfit or a beautiful honeymoon, then, it's a sacrifice that you're more than willing to make. And there's still photos. You're still going to get photos of you. You know what I mean? Now we're getting to the final chapter of ways to save money at your wedding. And tip number 17 falls into the apparel and others category. Because again, clothing and accessories and decor, these things really start to add up as well. Tip number 17 of saving money at your wedding is not a tip that I did, but it's something that I learned from. And that is that by having a smaller bridal party, you will inherently save a bit more money. I love my friends, and I have a lot of very close friends, and so does my fiance. And so he had like 6 groomsmen and I had 7 bridesmaids. I initially had 6, and then I was like, no, I feel bad. And I added an extra one. So we had a lot of people. And of course you don't think about it at the time, and I wouldn't have done it any differently, but all those people require, if you're going to give them gifts, that's included. If you're going to do a bachelorette and you're paying for it, then that's like, 6 people's hotel rooms that you're paying for, or 6 people's clothes that you're buying if you're asking them to wear the same outfit. So there's ways that you can reduce that cost, and that's just having a smaller bridal party or not doing a bridal party at all. I've seen a few wedding planners recommend not doing a bridal party, and I see where they're coming from. It's always been important for me though, that my friendships mean so much, and it's like so important to me to have the memories of like getting ready with my girls and us all like being in cute matching I don't know, like robes. And it's very silly and it's very materialistic, but at the same time, it's something that I valued. And so I was like, okay, I'm happy to put some money aside for that. Number 18, though, was a tip that I did end up doing, which is skipping wedding favors. This was something that might be a bit controversial, but I just think that if someone is coming to your wedding, the gift that you are giving them is the free food, the free alcohol, the beautiful like celebration. If you have like all these things that you're putting time and effort into making it beautiful and making it fun, the entertainment, if you have a DJ, like there are all these ways that you are encouraging them to have a good time. And I just don't think that, maybe it's also because I don't like things and I don't like tidbits. And so when I get gifted something at a wedding, I'm like, oh no, what am I going to do with this? Like this glass with my name on it. I don't necessarily need that. And I don't know if it brings me happiness as much as just like having a fun time and having like nice photos, with my friends and at their weddings. So I've been not a fan of wedding favors. Again, everyone's different. We looked into like this one wedding favor idea where there was a person that came and like painted or like watercolored everyone that came to the wedding, and then they had it as like a print. And we were like, oh, that's really cool. Like, let's look into it. And then we looked into it, and the cost was so high. It was like, oh, maybe it would be fine if we had like a wedding of 30 people or 50 people, but not the hundreds of people. So we were able to save money by not doing that. And in saying that, you can still be thankful to your wedding guests. Like you can still send them a beautiful text message afterwards individually, like, you know, after the honeymoon or after the wedding, and be like, hey, thank you so much for coming. That really meant a lot. You know, it was so great to see you. You can share with them the photos that the photographer took and like, you know, give everyone the ability to take these beautiful photos and save them. And, you know, that's kind of nice. I don't know. Maybe I'm grasping at straws here. I feel like this was probably the more controversial one. So this is the one I'm scared about sharing. But wedding favors, it's a great way to save money. And most people don't remember the favor. They remember like spending time with you and seeing you happy and like dancing with you. It's the memories, not the things. Number 19 at saving money at your wedding is letting your bridal party wear what they want. And so we are having a Sikh wedding and also a civil wedding. And for the Sikh wedding, because not all my friends have Indian outfits that are like conservative, and it would have just been like really difficult to kind of police that in a way, I was like, hey, I'll just order everyone's outfits. And it wasn't, you know, too expensive, but again, 7 bridesmaids, it adds up. What we then did to save money is for the civil wedding, we said, hey, this is the color that I would love you guys to wear. And you can just like choose whatever you want to wear in that color. And so some of my friends, you know, have saris. So they are going to wear that in like their sari color. Some of them have langas, some of them have Punjabi outfits, some of them have dresses. And so it's all going to be like different shades of the same color. And that worked out really well. Because when I've been a bridesmaid, that is what my friends have done. And they'll all be like, yeah, just wear the same shade of green, or wear the same, like everyone wear black, or everyone wear like light pink. And so in a way, it just makes everyone look cohesive, but you're not spending that much money. And then also they don't have to commit to like buying exactly what you want. If they already have something in that color, fantastic. And if not, they can rent it or they can buy it, but at least they can keep it and it's their style. Because everyone's going to have different body shapes. Everyone's going to have different heights. And what looks good on one person might not necessarily be as comfortable on someone else. And you kind of want all your bridesmaids to feel comfortable and to look and feel their best. Because if they feel their best, they're going to look their best. And so it's just being a little bit more considerate and at the same time saving money, which, you know, it's a nice extra to have. Number 20 is that for the groomsmen, like all the groomsmen in the wedding, rather than buying everyone a tux, because that would be crazy, you can hire them. And so we've done that like for the men in my family, because they will never wear a tux again. My dad was so hard to convince to even like go and look at the tuxes. But if you can just have it rented for a day, that is just going to cut down costs as well. And so that's a really great way to save money. Number 21 in saving money is when it comes to decor, be strategic about where you put things. And you don't need to necessarily have lots of decor. You just need to put it in places where people tend to congregate. So where are the places that people tend to congregate at a wedding? The bar area. And so if you're going to have like flowers, put the flowers there. If you are going to have like a seated dinner, then have a little bit of decor in the middle, but you don't necessarily have to have decor everywhere. And things like signage or like table seatings and things like that gets a little bit much. And you can definitely save money by reducing where the decorations need to be and just thinking like, where are the places people are going to appreciate them most? Because you'll be the only person that notices it. And the photographer might take like a couple of, decor photo shots, like stylish shots. But besides that, no one's going to remember the decorations. Again, they're going to remember you, how much fun you're having, how much fun they had. They're going to remember like if you danced together and if you had a laugh and the beautiful energy in the room. They're not going to be like, Sim skipped out on the flowers. Good luck to that wedding. Good luck to that marriage. Tip number 22 of saving at your wedding is having a spreadsheet of every single cost that you think will come up, putting in exactly what you want to pay for it. So we had like 3 different columns. One was like expected cost. The second column was quote. And the third column was how much we actually paid. And so it was just so much easier to manage a wedding budget when you know exactly how much you've spent. Otherwise, you are going to let that money turn into monopoly money. It is so easy to be like, oh, well, it's like $100 here, $1,000 here, $3,000 there, $4,000 there. And before you know it, you've spent like $20,000. And it goes so quickly because there's all these different vendors and you're buying and spending things over like months and months and months. And so it doesn't really feel cohesive. But by having a wedding budget on like an Excel spreadsheet, my fiance and I could see like exactly how much we had budgeted for, how much things cost. We also then got to see like, hey, we budgeted maybe $5,000 for one thing, but we were able to negotiate it down to being only $4,000. So we've saved $1,000. And so maybe we can spend that $1,000 on something else. You can also do it to see how much you're saving and kind of make it like a bit of a game. And by also having that third column of how much you've paid, you can also keep track of who's been paid and who you've only paid a deposit for and who still needs to be paid after the wedding. And so it just keeps everything clean and in one place. And that has really helped us. Has it stopped us from spending more than maybe we thought? No, but at least we know how much we are spending. Again, do as I say, not as I do when it comes to wedding costs. Number 23, to saving costs at your wedding. This might be a little bit controversial, but I don't think that if you're getting married, usually most people now that are getting married, they either live on their own already, or they're 2 different people that live on their own, or they live together. And so the need for like a wedding registry for things has become less necessary, especially if you have like 2 people that are coming together and they have their own couch and their own cutlery and their own, bed frame. And so by having a cash only wedding registry where it's like, hey, this is our wedding website and this is like a little cash fund that you can put anything you want if you so wish to, can help cut down the cost of the wedding. If, by the end you've got a couple of $100 or even a couple of $1,000 that have like helped pay off the cost of the wedding. Again, my mum said something so funny. She was like, Sam, like, if you invite a lot of people, the wedding breaks even. I was like, that is not the case whatsoever. That is not the case at all. Like people aren't the cost per head of a person is not how much people pay as gifts. And usually it's a family that gives a gift, not like one person. So this is not like a tip to have a 0 cost wedding. It's more just a way to reduce costs rather than having more things in your house. Like, do you really need another toaster? Do we really need like a fancy lamp post? I would rather take $50. That helps me a lot more. And the final way to save money for your wedding is to have just one single first dance lesson. My fiance and I did this rather than doing like 4 where we go somewhere and practice and practice and practice, we went one place and we kind of told them, hey, we just want to learn like a few basic steps that we can put together and make as our first dance. The dance instructor was so helpful. They like taught us a little routine and then they filmed it for us so that we could take it home and practice it ourselves. And so we didn't need multiple dance lessons. We just learned, okay, we can just do that at home. And to be honest, now knowing what I know, you can also just like watch a YouTube video with your partner where someone teaches you, a 1 minute, 2 minute dance routine. And that saves you like quite a bit of money compared to like having lots and lots of lessons. It's going to be like a minute or 2 minutes of your life to have your first dance. And no one's first dance is perfect unless you're like a professional dancer, in which case like we do expect a show. But if you're just two average people, it's usually just like a slow, awkward dance to an Ed Sheeran song and everyone's still crying for you. And so those are all the ways that you can save at your wedding. I hope that you take some of these away. If you found any of them helpful, please, please, please let me know. And if you've done things, let me know in the comments what has worked for you. If I have forgotten to mention something, because I'm sure there are more available. And then next week we have our next episode for the 3-part wedding series where I go into how much a wedding actually should cost depending on your income. I have lots of stats and data for that episode. I cannot wait to share it. It's going to be very, very fun. And I'll see you next week.